All right, here's a quick update on my Canon C100 MKII that was taken in for repair a few weeks ago, and I just got it back today, so I want to give you an update for those who are paying attention. The first thing they changed was 2 PCB boards, which basically is a circuitry or circuit boards for the actual main circuitry of the camera, which is pretty much like equivalent to the motherboard or the brains of the camera, like you would have on a PC or a motherboard for a PC or a Mac or any type of computer. So the other thing they changed was the PCB board for the circuitry of the SD card. So I imagine it's the entire SD tray that came out. So with that being said, it was hard for them to actually duplicate the problem initially. So I advise anybody who has any issues with any high-end electronics to make sure you can document it in any kind of way, whether it be through photo, through video, or whatever it is. And because I did that was what allowed them to help find the problem a lot faster. Because the problem is this: if you send something like this in this camera and I need to use it weekly, daily, or whatever it is, if they can't reproduce the problem right on the spot, they may end up going back and just sending it back to you. And then what happens is, because they couldn't find it, you're going to end up using the camera and it's going to fail on you, and then you have to send it back again. It's a constant back and forth. So because I was able to upload the original video, I forwarded it to them, and they were able to look at it and get information from it to better utilize or better diagnose the problem. All right, so what I wanted to do is, even though my particular situation was a generic, just random thing that just happened to go wrong with the computer boards inside of the circuitry, it's very random. It's not a known issue that usually happens with this camera. I've never seen it. I don't think anybody knows about it. You can't find it anywhere on the internet unless you see my video probably. So, but let me just give you these tips. So ever since I got this camera back, it really made me go through the manual and really read all the small things that most people will probably ignore, even on DSLRs probably. Now, it doesn't mean that if you do these things, it's going to just wreck your camera, but it's still a possibility or greater chance that you could have issues like I had by doing some of these things that could lead to the damage that came to mine, even though mine was just from random, just for no reason, I guess, just bad pieces. Okay, the first thing I want to talk about is using AC power, right? So when you first use AC power, if you already have the battery in the camera and you want to plug in the AC adapter for the wall, you have to turn the camera completely off. Turn it off, make sure no lights are on, let it boot complete or shut down completely, plug in the AC adapter, turn the camera back on, and at this point you have the battery in the camera. You can actually take the battery in or out as you wish. Just make sure you don't unplug the AC adapter. Now, to unplug the AC adapters, it's the same process. You actually are supposed to turn off the switch completely, turn the camera off, and then take the AC adapter out. Now, this is something that can easily be overlooked because it's not like it's a compartment that you have to open up. It's just literally a plug and play thing. So if you don't do this, it can possibly or potentially lead to damage of internals of the camera, which similar to maybe what happened to mine, those type of issues. So you just don't know. So these are just preventative measures that can help these issues in the future. The other thing is that you might not think about, and all these things that I'm saying are actually in the manual. There's no secret about it. It's in the manual, but they can just easily be looked over. So I'm just going to reiterate a lot of these for you. The other one is the SD card reader, or the SD card slots, the dual slots. Now, this is specifically, everything I'm saying is from the C100 MKII. You can reference it in the manual, but it's more than likely the same for most electronics in this nature, or other C brands as far as the 300 or the maybe even the C500. Now, the SD card slot, the first thing you want to do is, if it's red, don't eject or open the door. The indicator light that turns green or red. Green means it's ready. Red means basically it's reading the card. If you eject it, you may not damage your camera, but you can corrupt footage that's on the card and you may lose it. So what you want to do is make sure the light is not red. Another thing you want to do, maybe don't power the camera off while it's red. Let it settle and then turn it off. Now, the other thing that's really important that you may not even think of, even myself, to be honest, I might have done it a few times. While the camera's powered on, you actually don't want to open the SD card slot tray, and you actually or the slot, the lid, and you actually don't want to actually take the cards out. If you want to take any of the cards out, whether it be A or B, whether you're not reading from it or not, you basically want to power the camera completely off. Now, when you take the memory card out after the indicators light have gone blank, then you want to go ahead and put them back in, or the new one, or the whatever you're doing, exchanging it for whatever, and then turn the camera back on. So make sure it's completely powered off first. You may skip over this also, and this is actually in the instruction part of it. You'll see it in small print, but I think a lot of people look over this part of it too. And these are just safety tips for your camera. And the other thing is, if you do a firmware update specifically for this camera, what happens is, when you do an update, when I first got this camera, it took me quite a while to get my picture profiles correct, menu settings correct. It was adjustment from what I was using prior to this. So After I finally got everything right, they had a firmware update. I jumped on it, did the firmware update. I don't even know if I really needed it, but I did it anyway. As soon as I did it, I realized that everything in the camera went back to factory defaults. So you want to make sure that you take an SD card, put it in the proper way, and make sure your camera's turned on after the fact, and go ahead and go under your picture profile once you create whatever you're using, unless you use something like Cinema Lock where you're not touching anything. If you customize anything in the camera, make sure you do this. Go to picture profile, go under load. There's a tab on there for, I think, other function is basically to load or to save to an SD card. You want to save it to a new profile on your SD card, and you can actually go to the menu settings itself too for the entire camera, and I'm not sure if that saves the profiles with it, but it definitely saves all the other settings that you made for the camera. You want to go and save that profile for your menu settings and your picture profile, and what happens is going to be in your SD card. Go ahead and copy that and put it in your regular hard drive on a computer. Put it in a safe place and make sure you have somewhere to reference it later, like I did. So this is what I did this time, and I was able to get my camera back exactly how I had it from before I sent it into Canon. So make sure this too, when you want to load the profiles back to your camera, make sure however you copied it off the memory card, meaning file structure, names, exactly, you want to copy it back exactly the same way. I believe mine, it started off in a private folder, and then it was like a Canon picture profile underscore something, and it had the profiles inside. The profiles itself are not named, even though you may name them inside the camera. They're just generic numbers that if you make another profile, it'll replace it with those same numbers typically. So if this was helpful at all, please hit like and subscribe, or for more information, please visit www.howtoandreviews.com. Till next time.